Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Sean, sometimes known as the Beast, and I thought I'd do something a little bit different rather than just constantly doing updates of stuff that's just come in, and there is still a shed load of it up there to show. I thought I'd go back to when the type of music that first got me started. Now, if you watched any of my videos, you know it was Maiden that got me into it initially. Last week, myself and Mrs. Beast went down to Manchester to finally see Mika live, and no surprise, she was absolutely incredible. But after watching her live, it got me thinking to how many like female fronted or all female bands I had actually listened to over the years, and what part they played in my enjoyment of metal and how it progressed to predominantly 90% of what I listen to now, which is death metal. Now, I did an entry into Trevor's competition over at Fumes of Hatred and showed an album that I'm going to show here. I hadn't played it for absolutely eons, so I thought, yeah, we'll do a little bit of the ladies who sort of rocked Baby Beast back in the day. So first up is the album that I mentioned when I was doing Trevor's competition video. It's Phantom Blues, self-titled. This came out in 1989 on Shrapnel Records. This is an all-girl group, as you can see, and it's basically hard rock, bit of an edgy metal vibe in places. There's no inlay sheets on 90% of these, so there's no point trying to get them out. But yeah, this was co-produced by Marty Friedman, the bit of a guitar wizard, and the two girls that were in the band that played guitar were both really good. Nicole Couch and Michelle Meldrum. Linda McDonald, the drummer, I think she now drums for the Iron Maidens. I don't know what any of the other girls are doing. Michelle Meldrum passed away, unfortunately, far too young. But yeah, this is it's really cleanly produced. All the instruments are crisp and you can hear it, and it's just a solid, good old-fashioned 80s hard rock, bordering on metal slightly album. So that's Phantom Blue, and they're self-titled. So going back, way back when, to even this album, next album was released before I even got into metal. But I've seen this band countless times since over the years, and they're always entertaining. And it is Girl School. This is their Hit and Run from 1981. It's their second full length, and this is out on Bronze Records. Like I say, it came out in 81, and the added bonus, I suppose, is in 1981 there weren't many vinyls that were translucent red. Now, Girl School are synonymous with Motorhead, and they are pretty much the female version of Motorhead. Obviously not as heavy and certainly not as gruff as Mr. Killmister was, but this is a proper toe tapping, head banging, smile on your face type of record. A lot of the tracks on here are still stalwarts in the live sets, or at least they have the last 3 or 4 times I've seen them. But it's got a lot of groove to it, it's got a lot of rhythm, and it's just a fun record, like most of Girl School stuff are. You know, I mean, none of these are groundbreaking or, you know, trying to be different in such respect. But bearing in mind, 1981, an all-girl metal band coming out, it's pretty unheard of back then, and they've just celebrated the 45th anniversary, I believe, so you know they've obviously stood the test of time. But yeah, so that's Girl School and Hit and Run. Now next up is a lady who was definitely a pioneer for all girl rock groups. This is her debut album, and this is Lita Ford's Out for Blood from 1983. This came out on Mercury Records, and it's just good old-fashioned hard rock. Now, I don't think Lita had ever confessed to being the world's greatest vocalist. However, there was no denying this lady can play a guitar. And she released some decent albums. I mean, obviously this isn't one that she's well known for. She's probably more known for a self-titled one with the Can't Catch Me and Shuts Like on it. But it's a solid rock album that showcases that, you know, the Runaways ran away. Lita, Joan Jett, you know, they're probably the only two that you really hear of now consistently still. Both went on to forge successful solo careers and definitely left the mark on Baby Beast when he was a mere infant back in the day. So that's Lita and her Out for Blood first solo album. Next up is a lady who's changed genres more times than I've changed my socks, but predominantly she's always had that rock vibe. She's got one of the best power ballad voices ever, in my opinion. Not necessarily on show on this record. This is the Lee Aaron Project and her debut solo album. She did go on to make far better records than this one, but there's a rawness and an edginess about it. This came out in 1984. This is actually the Germany metronome release. There's a rawness and sort of a groove that goes throughout it all. There's some, you know, there's some half decent tracks on here. I guess she's not trying to define a genre with one release. But again, 1984. It was quite a risk for artists back then to come out with this type of release. I know she got caught up in the whole furore of putting very little clothing on to sell records, but sex sells. It's as simple as that. You go back to the days of Elvis in the 50s and shaking his ass and stuff. It was all part of the, let's see how many records we can sell. I know she did a couple of topless shoots and stuff, and I'm sure she probably regrets it now, but back then, you know, a step onto the ladder, I suppose, back in the 80s. The track, which one is it? Night Riders. That's probably the closest thing to what you'd call a metal track on this album. It's quite quick, some good guitar work and such like, but yeah. So that's Lee Aaron and her self-titled, well, the Lee Aaron Project and their self-titled debut release. Now this next band is a band that I would consider, out of these ones I'm showing, is metal, and it's their second album. This is Warlock and their album Hellbound. This came out in 1985 on Vertigo Records. Doro Pesch and the rest of the chaps are from Germany. I believe they all are on this album anyway. This is the follow-up to Burning the Witches. Now, Burning the Witches is always going to be my favourite Warlock album because it was the first one I ever heard. But this has got some absolute belters on. And again, there's a lot of the tracks that are on here she uses predominantly in her live set now. So, yeah, if you want to sort of go back in time and you're feeling a bit nostalgic and you can get a copy of this, I'm sure there'll be hundreds of them around. None of these are very rare. It's the type of album that makes you smile, makes you tap your toes. There's nothing serious to it. It's just a good old-fashioned hard rock bordering on metal release. Now then, last up for this little update, as it is a band that's a little bit more classy, got a bit more of a, you can sort of hear other bands in them. This is Helen and their Scream in the Night debut from 1987. This is out on Music for Nations. This is a mix of heavy speed metal. Now I believe Ronnie James Dio had quite a bit to do with like showcasing this band. and you can definitely hear there's a Dio type vibe in the music. There's even little bits of maybe Alice Cooper type tunes in there. Ann Womack, the singer, has got a fantastic rock voice. It's the guitar sound is 80s in a nutshell. So when you think of Maiden, Saxon, Diamond Head, bands like that, you know, the earlier rock bands, then the guitar work on this just sits nicely in that niche. It's not over the top. It's not too like Ingvar type widdly widdly fret wanking shit. I mean, there's a couple of bits like that, but Ann Womack's voice, for me, I'm surprised they didn't go on to bigger and being a lot bigger than they actually ended up being. But it's a good album that sort of, again, it's just a throwback to the 80s, and I've really enjoyed re-listening to all these this week, just to sort of get them back into my head and thinking which bits I liked. To be honest, the ones that I thought I would have enjoyed the best were probably the ones I was like, actually it's not as important to my listening anymore. But back then, obviously, it played a part in where we ended up today. So that's it for this one. So I'll try and do something a little bit different. If there's any type of interest in it, I might do a couple of different categories. Maybe early thrash records I got into, the early metal records. Obviously I won't mention Number of the Beast because that gets played all the time. But let me know down in the comments if you've listened to any of these. If you're of a certain vintage like I am, you've probably heard them countless times. Thanks as always to anybody that sticks with me to the end of the video. The sub count sort of leveled out now, so maybe doing something a bit different rather than just doing constant updates of what I've been bought and like showing off I've got this, I've got that. We'll dig some of the old stuff out of the collection, maybe do a few more CD shows as well. Thank you very much for watching. If you found something entertainment, please give me a thumbs up, drop down in the comments as I said, and until next time, and as always, cheers!